We're going to try this Riverside thing, and it seems to be, Zach and I did a test. We'll see how it goes. In today's episode of Sips and Clips, we chat with Brett W. Bachmann, ACE, a skilled editor in the indie film scene. Hailing from the rolling farm hills of Maple Valley, Washington, to the esteemed AFI Conservatory, Brett found himself immersed in the independent horror genre through SpectroVision. With his work showcased at Sundance, Cannes, TIFF, and South by Southwest, Brett has edited a diverse array of films like Mandy, Pig, The Toxic Avenger, and Companion. All right, well, welcome to this episode of Sips and Clips. My name is Leanne McFalls.
Hi, I'm Zach Griffin.
Zach is filling in for Michael today because he is not available. He has been very, very gracious to come in. We've got a wonderful guest today, Brett Bachmann. Is that how you pronounce?
That is how you pronounce it, yes.
All right. Want to say hi to the people, Brett?
Hello. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Brett.
Yeah, this is our first time using this remote setup called Riverside. So shout out to Riverside for creating sort of like a Zoom, but specifically for podcasts. But we'll start with what we're sipping on, as usual. Brett, I'll let you go first.
I have an Americano, which is way too hot to drink.
Did you make it yourself?
I did make it myself. I live in a little bit of a coffee desert, so I splurged on an espresso machine 3 years ago. It is nice, but this thing is, I'm going to have to put this aside for like 20 minutes. It is toxic.
Can I ask you what kind of espresso machine it is?
I bought myself an early Christmas present a few years ago. We are living in an area of LA that has like, I don't know what's going on, but there's no coffee shops within a 10-minute drive of us.
Oh, really? That's really shocking.
It's quite shocking. It's, I think, like the one little Point Nemo Zexus in Los Angeles. And I'm coming from Los Feliz, where we had like the most amount of coffee shops, I think, per capita in the country.
Yeah.
So it's, what kind of espresso machine is it? It's made of chrome. Or no, it's made of aluminum. It's got like a chrome finish. It's very nice. It weighs a lot. I don't know where it kind of falls on the spectrum of good coffee machine, but it weighs like 35 pounds. So I'm assuming that's a good thing.
They class them by weight.
Yeah. We got a espresso machine because our directors wanted an espresso machine on my show. So they got this machine that is maybe $5,000.
Whoa.
And there was I was not here, this was before I came on, but apparently there was someone that had to teach them how to use it. And it was like a 3-hour session on how to use this espresso machine. You know, because it has so many different settings. So it's like, if you want this much, like make sure to like stop it at this point and don't have it overflow. Don't put too much water in it. Like however strong it's like, it's so complicated. I could never figure it out.
You must make eye contact when you approach it. Take 2 steps at a time. Bow,
basically.
Wait for the light to turn on before you take another step.
Say a prayer, praise it, all hail the espresso machine.
That's too complex for me. And I was intimidated by SodaStream. When I got a SodaStream, I was like, how does this thing work? I don't really know.
Does that go into what you're drinking?
Sort of. I'm a drink goblin, so I like to have multiple things. But today it's SodaStream because I'm addicted to it. And I also just make my own cold brew at home with La Colombe whole beans that I grind up. I have like a little cold brew maker, which is about as lo-fi as you can get, which is just like you put the grounds in the thing, you add the water, and you let it sit for 12 hours.
12 hours?
Minimum.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I usually make it the night before and just like let it sit, and then I'll have it in the morning. But I never drink all of it, so it's usually for like the whole week. Which is sacrilege to Michael, I know, but if you're using high quality beans, it doesn't really make a difference. If you ask.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
What are you sipping on, Leanne?
I am drinking on regular coffee. There was a bag of coffee beans that I had gotten from someone as a gift, and I was doing that. But then today I just felt like not prepping anything, and I just used Maxwell breakfast blend, you know, and I don't taste too much of a difference. So
you need that vessel for sugar somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And how many sugars are in that coffee?
Okay,
Leanne?
let me tell you this. So I looked this up because I usually put a tablespoon of sugar in, and then a tablespoon of I used to just do like the Kroger vanilla, like lactose free milk. And then when I started working, I was like, well, I'm going to splurge. And I get the Chobani sweet creamer. So I do a tablespoon of each. I looked up how much a tablespoon of sugar is, and it's 15 grams of sugar. The average daily dose, like serving for the day, is like 32. So you know what? I am halfway. If I just don't have any sugar for the rest of the day, then I'm under the quota for too much sugar. So
That's
that
one
kinda
way
made
of
me
looking
feel
at
better.
it.
It made me feel better about myself. All right, Brett, we'll bring it to you now. Why don't you tell us your story, how you got interested in film and how you got on this crazy path?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Really happy to be here. I started pretty young. I grew up in the foothills of Seattle, Washington. It's a little town called Maple Valley. And the first exposure to anything kind of video production related was taking the mini DV camcorder back in 2003, 2004, going out into the farm. We grew up on like 5 acres in a hobby farm, like
Oh my
in the
God.
shadows of the Cascade Mountains.
Wait, if you had a farm, did you also have like a bunch of farm animals as well?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Like
yes.
chickens, horses, all of that. Wow.
We had chickens, we had ducks, we had a cat, 2 cows at one point. We had pigs. I mean, this is like they're like in kind of like a cyclical rotation. We never had like everything all at once, but it was there for 15 years, and we definitely played farmer for a little bit. But I would take this mini DV camera out in the farm, and I would record the farm animals, bring them into Windows Movie Maker
Yes.
with my old FireWire, and I would make montages with farm animals.
About how old were you when you started doing this?
I was like 15.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
It would be, I would bring in the Yellow song, Chicka Chicka, the Ferris Bueller song. And that became kind of like the Genesis track. But no matter what other music I tried on like subsequent montages, I always had to come back to that.
It was your shtick. You had to stick with it.
Yeah.
To this day?
I have not yet to use it in anything since then. I don't know how much it would cost. Interesting. But that's how I started. And the initiating event, the thing that really got things going for me, I was a junior in high school, and we have this career fair called the Senior Project. And you're meant to build something, do research, build something, job shadow somebody while following a prospective career path. And I, at the time, was thinking either zoology or medicine. So I decided I'm going to research what it is to be a general practitioner. I'm going to job shadow an ER doctor. But the third criteria, building something. I was like, what? I can't think of anything I would want to build that's about medicine. Where would I even start? I'm 17 years old. And so I asked the mentor in charge of this thing, like, what if I can't think of anything? Can I make up something that's like in another genre entirely? And they were like, yeah, of course. There's a buddy of mine that I was over at his house one day, and he's like, I want to show you this video. And it was a highlight video of his wrestling team that he had been a player on. And it was like most of it was like most conventional highlight reels you see for like sports teams. But the thing that it had in 2004 that like no other highlight videos had was interviews. It had a documentarian talking to people about their experience on the team, what this experience meant to them. And suddenly I felt like this was not just, a home-held video. This was telling a story. The idea of this career fair came up, and I was like, well, I'm playing football. I was entering my senior year on the team, and I thought, can I do something like this, but for my team? And instead of just doing like highlight reel interviews, can I make a documentary about my senior year, and really more about not so much about me, but like more about the team. So for the next year, I followed my team around and I shot stuff. Really, the biggest epiphany for me happened after I had obtained all this footage, and I realized I don't know how to slam all this together. Like, how do I actually make a movie out of this? I think because I knew I was going to be entering this experience, I had signed up for my first year of video production. And I had no formal training in anything video production related, but I would come into the lab every single day after school. I would stay until like 7 p.m. every single night, ingesting material onto an eMac and an iMac in Final Cut Pro 5, building something out. And that continued for months and months and months. And I had a movie. It was a 2-hour and 52-minute movie, and I arranged a little premiere. The second part of this biggest moment actually came the next day when I'm returning to the video production lab at 2:45 p.m. after school, and I sit down at that eMac and I open up Final Cut Pro and I realize there's nothing left to do. Movie's done. And I was like, I'm going to miss this experience so much, and now I have to go back to learn how to be a doctor.
At this point, I want to know, though, you weren't thinking, let me go to film school
No.
It was just like, oh, this is something I have to do for senior projects, but my career path is pre-med right now.
That changed basically looking at that computer, though. The day after, I was like staring at the Final Cut Pro 5 timeline. I'm like, oh, this is over. And I realized I can make another one. I can make a short film. I can do a music video. There are other projects I can like throw all of this misplaced ambition and confidence in and enthusiasm for. And that's what I did. So I graduated high school a few months later, and I went to Western Washington University up in Bellingham, Washington. And I threw myself into, we didn't really have much of a film program up there in the conventional sense. It's definitely not a film grad program or an undergrad program, but they had a TV station that I got into a sketch comedy show. I got into like some music video shows. And by senior year, it got to a point where I was spending 70% of my time doing the sketch comedy shows, writing stuff, directing stuff, editing stuff. And it was clear, like, okay, this is not just a hobby. I think I changed my major by freshman year. I was like, okay, screw science. Like, no more zoology, no more pre-med. What can I do that is like a parallel path? Because there's no film program here. So let's look into an English degree, because then I can take some of the film classes in like the 300 level. I had a theater minor, so I could start doing some directing classes, some writing classes, some acting classes.
Yeah. So you were able to kind of like make your schedule be the most film program, I guess.
As the school allowed.
Yeah, short of like actually doing a screenwriting class and doing like a film acting class, I felt like, okay, I'm hitting kind of all the basics. And all the production components I was getting myself. Like I was teaching myself all of the elements of like, this is what a C-stand is. So that kind of brought me up to, I was graduating. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be serious about this, I have to find myself into New York or Los Angeles. I'm still young, but like I'm enthused right now. I'm like 21 years old. I want to go. I want to keep on learning this. And so I applied very late to film school. But so I was like, okay, Columbia out, deadline's passed. NYU, deadline's passed. USC, deadline is passed. AFI, deadline is passed. Well, for directing, it's passed, but for editing, it's still open. There's a few other schools that have openings for directing.
Did you want to be a director, or at this point you were pretty set on editing?
At this time, I was directing everything I was cutting. I was nervous. I was an anxious wreck on set. I think that kind of loops me back to why I think I'm a better editor than I am a director, because I love the comfort of an editing room. I don't find the experience stressful at all. I find it a very safe space. I find it the act of constructing something, of assembling something, very invigorating. I could be at my desk. I can fuck up all the time at my desk as long as I'm not deleting media, and that's just part of the process. And that's something I still very much preach to this day. No, you should take risks. You should definitely not be afraid of fucking up at the Avid, because I mean, that's how you stumble upon some really wonderful things. And that's also how I think you are a great collaborator as well, as you go outside of your comfort zone to work with a director or a producer, and maybe follow a line of inquiry of notes that you may not necessarily come natural at first, but you can discover some cool things. I remember I was telling this to some buddies, like, oh, all these film school options, maybe it's not for me. So my buddies kind of like stopped talking. They looked at each other. They formed like a little huddle that I was excluded from. And it's like the six of them kind of like talking. They grab each other and like they're whispering to each other. And then they breathe and they all turn around to me at the same time, like an intervention. And my buddy Christian kind of sighs and he's like, you are a much better editor than you are a director.
Wow.
If you have an opportunity to pursue AFI, you would be an idiot not to do it.
I can just imagine the typical movie scene where like, they all huddle and then the one person like looks up and like the other one's like pulling him back in the huddle, like, stop looking at him. No. We're talking, we got to do this.
Yeah, and I swear it was basically that.
Yeah.
It felt
that sounds exactly like it. Yeah.
It felt kind of sitcom-y, but
so funny.
It lit a fire under my butt. So I was shocked by how much the next day I was like, I'm going to write my fucking cover letter. I'm going to get in my 2 films for reference. I was like, I had an application done within like 2 days and I got it in. And in the summer of 2009, I had graduated Western Washington University and I moved my butt down to Los Feliz and I started AFI at 22 years old. I found myself at home down there. And more importantly for me, it was my excuse to go to Los Angeles. I had no base. I didn't know anybody in these cities, New York or Los Angeles. I was so nervous about moving to one of these big cities. And I knew if I had attended one of these graduate programs, I would have the likely outcome of meeting friends and having a base of people that I could go through my 20s in one of these big cities with. And that's exactly what I got.
Does AFI just do graduate programs, or they do undergrad programs?
They are only graduate.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's a relatively small school. You only have, when I was there, it was broken up into 14 editors. And then the other disciplines, you had like 22 directors, 22 cinematographers, 22 producers. I think those numbers have fluctuated in the last few years. I think now we're up to like 20-ish editors a year. But my graduating class was somewhere around 110, 115.
And then I'm guessing that when you came down here and did the program, you then stayed. You didn't go back and come. Yeah.
I graduated 2012 and then had absolutely no idea what I was going to do next. I don't think I realized how big the city was and how the steps after graduation, like what was going to entail, because that was scary.
I was just going to ask another question about AFI. AFI obviously wants their students to work together. Do you think that just admitting a small number for each discipline is the way that they ensure that that happens? Do you think that they're ever going to expand, or they have the capacity or desire to do that? Or do you think that the intimacy is part of what makes it special?
I hope they don't expand. Like, I think the intimacy is a central part of like why I learned so much, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about people. It's all about networking. It's all about learning to deal with different personalities, and all about, so, when you leave this graduate program, you have a base, you have a really tight-knit group of people. I can't say what it would be like at another institution, but that's what it did for me.
So after you've graduated from AFI and now you're in Los Angeles, what did you do? What did you do to navigate all of this?
I didn't even know where to start after I graduated. I had taken like an intern job, some of my only work experience outside of like the academic world. So I didn't know where to start. I was like, Craigslist? I think this was before Mandy. I had no... I was like, okay, I've been hearing for years from some of these wonderful professors, get in as a post-PA, get into the union, build your hours. So most of my opportunities those first few years came from friends, came from colleagues that I graduated with. So I had booked some light graphics work on a few spec commercials. I was doing music videos. I was doing short films that were paying very, very little.
Is this all editing, or is this like just anything that you could get your hands on?
Oh, this was all editing by this point.
Okay.
There was some like graphics work for like visual effects, and there was even like a sound job I had done at one point, but like 95% of like what I'm getting paid for by this point is film editing. I think one of the most stable things I had for a while was doing videos for Funny or Die. So I remember like one of the first things I ever did was with like Adam Scott and Rob Riggle and Lauren Kahn, called HJ Gloves. I'm just trying to kind of really at this point get anything I could. But I was certainly looking for the opportunities to kind of work my way into something scripted.
So what was the first kind of scripted movie or show that you started working on? And then did that push your career, or did it like things change after that?
Great question. I had a few opportunities to assist. An opportunity came up to be I got a post-PA gig working with one of my old professors on this film called Chernobyl Diaries. And it was a great experience to like actually get into a cutting room, see how things were done with the director, with the post-producer at a high level. But that was a pretty short opportunity. I think I was only on that movie for about a month. And I was looking for other post-PA things, but nothing was really coming. And then a buddy of mine, Ruben, had an opportunity to assist or edit a low-budget horror film, and I got on as an assistant to do the reshoots on that. And that was only going for a few weeks, but just the opportunities kind of weren't coming, and I didn't really know how to get my foot in the door anywhere. I had a few scripts that made their way down to me kind of in the genre space and the indie budget space, but it was that catch-22 of, well, we're looking for someone, young, hungry, but you haven't done anything. There's nothing on your resume that indicates you can do a feature. And so it was that revolving door of kind of getting your door shut in your face. But I'm like, I'm 25, I'm hungry, I'll do anything. I'm still in Los Angeles. The first real gig, the first like real opportunity came my way from an email sent out by Chris Schwartz over at AFI. And he's like, I have a buddy that's going into production on a low budget genre movie. They're looking for an editor. If any of you are interested, submit your resumes. And I think I had submitted my resume before I'd done reading the email. Like, I think the website was out, the reel was out, the resume was out. Like, I want this. And I got an email the next day. And they're like, can you call the producer right now? And I did. And they were like, can you come up to Burbank right now? And I did. I got in my car and I drove up there like at 75 miles an hour on I-5. Yep. And I got onto set and I'm in the trailer. And they're like, okay, yeah, it's a low budget fight tournament movie. This is what you'd be making a week, which was not much. But they're like, yeah, we're directors, vetted you. We've gone through your resume, gone through your portfolio. It looks all good. And, Chris at AFI says wonderful things about you. And I was like, yes.
Like, I'll do anything.
Yeah. I
You want
was
me
like,
for free? I'll do it.
I was worried I was so desperate that I was vibrating, but I was just like so happy to like be in the room. But that was a film called Raise, and the director on that film was this guy named Josh C. Waller. And him and I hit it off pretty easily. And so after a few weeks of working on this movie in Burbank, he was like, by the way, I have another movie going in just a few months. It's a cop movie with David Morse called Mechanic. Would you be interested in doing that? Shaking my head, nodding yes as fast as I can, worried that I'm going to snap a vertebrae. So I was now editing those two movies kind of concurrently. These are both non-union movies, both like under 500K. And Josh Waller, director of both these movies, had just started a production company. And he was like, my producing partners and I are going to try and make art house horror that is not really represented right now in the United States. We want to make movies like Let the Right One In, that were not really seen in the United States at this time. And we have this movie that we're going to go into production called Cooties, which is about a zombie outbreak that occurs at an elementary school. And the hook is that as if you've gone through puberty, the virus doesn't affect you. So it's only children that the virus turns, hence Cooties. They were like, I'm producing this movie with my producers, Daniel Noah and Elijah Wood. Would you be interested in being a candidate for this movie? And again, I'm like shaking my head that I'm like
Is this
shaking the desk.
Blumhouse?
No, this was, so their company was called Spectravision.
Oh,
or is
okay.
called Spectravision.
Yeah.
One of my questions was, how are you going to get involved with Spectravision? Because they've become a common denominator in a lot of the indie films that you initially worked on, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And even still a little bit.
Yeah, that's great.
Still know those guys.
I just want to ask real quick, is there a reason why you didn't go the post PA or assistant editor route? Or is it just that jobs weren't coming up and the editor job just came up and
the jobs weren't coming up?
Yeah. Okay.
There was the opportunities to be a post PA or assistant were so competitive, especially at that age range. And I'd taken everything that had been thrown my way. I was like, yes, I will take it. And it came a point like after these first two features that I was in with these producers, the Spectravision guys, and they were pretty prolific. They had films coming down the pipeline that were getting greenlit, and they were like, Brett, you have to meet the director. The director has to sign off on you. We just can't like hire you automatically. But so-and-so, meet Brett. We love Brett.
I mean, at this point, then you've now proven yourself as an editor, so I could understand. You just kept moving on as
I just kept cutting.
An editor. Yeah, you just kept cutting.
All non-union stuff, but I was building, a little resume. And so I stayed in this little indie film world for several years. I was getting opportunities based off my relationship with Spectravision, doing a lot of their side projects, stuff that wasn't necessarily under the company banner. I'd done a movie called Bitch that was about a woman who has a psychotic, the film Night Bitch with like Amy Adams. We did another one called Bitch that came out like 7 years before. So I was very much involved in kind of like this low budget indie non-union sphere of art house horror. Before you had Neon, before you had A24, the Spectravision was like one of the companies kind of at the ground, like kind of getting in, making these movies.
Does Spectravision, do they only do like horror indie movies?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know too much about the whole world and genre and all that, so that's why
it's kind of their mantra. Like it's a passion project for all of them. From the beginning, they're like, we're going to make the weird, esoteric, very niche stuff that no one else will want to make. We're going to take chances on experimental avant-garde films with crazy premises.
Is Color Out of Space Spectravision?
Yes, it
Color
is.
Out of Space is really wild too, Leanne. It's like this meteor crashes and starts affecting everyone's brains in this it's really cool.
My landmark film was this film called Mandy. It was one of my almost my 10th film with the Spectravision guys, and this film, it's a mind melter. Like it's something that I remember reading the script, and the text is dripping with texture, and it feels possessed. It feels sick. Like it just, the way that Panos wrote this material was just, the vibes were just exuding off the page.
That's also the experience of watching it. It like really, it's a film that you like really have to like let wash over you. I can imagine like having that document became key because there's so much just like, well, there's no like straight dialogue scene sometimes. It's just like, oh, we're going to float over the forest for a little while. Or like, we're just going to kind of drift into this space and like feel what it's like. Like he's just such like he's a vibes director. It's so interesting.
Yeah. It's a fever dream film. It's phantasmagoric. It's ethereal. It's very decidedly a film not for everybody. And if it is your shit, like it's very, very much your shit, which is to its credit. Like it's not a film. We didn't even go through test screenings because my producers were like, we're not trying to get audience members. Like we're making a Panos movie. We're not trying to make the movie for other people. We're trying to make the movie that Panos wants to make. We're going to give him the full support.
That's
and if
great.
you tune into that, that's wonderful. But by adjusting this film to fit financier taste or test audience taste, this is not this type of movie.
I think there was a director, I think it was the director of Triangle of Sadness, but I could be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I remember reading an article and he was like, yeah, it wasn't Triangle of Sadness, but it was another film that he made. And it was like, I want so many people to leave the theater in disgust. If I get the more people that leave the theater in disgust of this film, the better. And it was like, that was the first time I ever read some kind of thing where the director like purposely wanted to make something that was so outlandish or so gross or so that he wanted people to leave in the middle of the movie. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like that's what that your film was trying to. No, I'm kidding, but
I mean, we there are some scenes in the film.
I'm sure. No, I'm sure.
Well, here's the thing. Like I didn't know what the audience for this movie at all. I mean, we're editing the film in Vancouver and Los Angeles. We finished the film in Belgium, and I find out while mixing the film that we got into Sundance.
Wow.
My third film in Sundance. I mean, no one knows. You can talk to any editor. I don't think they really have a firm understanding of like the legacy of the film when they're working on it. So we finish this film, and we're just in the marathon of trying to finish this thing, and we throw it up at midnight in the library in Park City, and lights come on at 2 a.m. after the 2-hour runtime, and there's just like silence in the audience. And you're like, oh, fuck. like most people in the audience are still there. But you're like, oh, shit, this is going to be a bad Q&A. And you go up and there's just like this glaze over people's faces where I don't think they really know what they just sat through. I was telling my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, I was like, I'm not going to check any reviews. I'm not going to read anything. I have no idea how people took this at all. I lasted a day until I checked on the reporter and I read something. I was like, oh, this is like surprisingly good. Like this is a great review. That forms an avalanche, and you start like checking and checking and checking and checking. And so after 2 days, I hadn't read a single bad review.
Wow.
I was like, what is going on? And I'm in the car driving from Park City back to Los Angeles, and I hop on Rotten Tomatoes, and the very front of Rotten Tomatoes says currently the best reviewed film out of Sundance is this Gonzo Nick Cage demon bike rider film.
Oh my God.
This is the year of Hereditary. This is the year of 8th Grade. And coming out of the festival, it seemed like the film that most people were talking about was Mandy, which I couldn't fathom, especially the year that Hereditary was there. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's insane. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it was insane. It very felt like a parallel universe. Like what? Like I was very proud of the movie, but I was like, oh my God, people love this. And that film, it's a watershed moment certainly for my career, because after I think it was like my 12th feature film I cut, had no interest from agencies before then, but like after this film, I'm starting getting some phone calls, starting to get some knocks. It's how I meet my team over at UTA. How I get signed over there. And anyone that's kind of come up in the indie film, there's like a little bit of a kind of a glass ceiling in indie world where you're trying to kind of find other opportunities and find other jobs. You just can't really penetrate that glass ceiling. Like either you have maybe 10 titles, but no one's heard of these movies. So producers you're not on producers' radars. But this film, enough people had heard about it, maybe not had seen it, but enough people had heard it that like, oh, I can get my foot in the door on this interview. I can take this interview. Took a few more years until I was like, oh, I feel established. I feel like I can stay a film editor for the next 20 years. By far, it's been the most important movie of my career.
Yeah, you just said something that sort of like rings true for me right now, which is like it took 12 features for you to feel like, okay, this is my career.
Yeah.
I feel like right now I'm in a space where I'm sure a lot of people, especially right now because work has been slow the past few years and less movies, it seems like, are getting made, where you work on something exciting and then you're not quite sure if you're ever going to get the chance to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you felt like that until Mandy, essentially.
I mean, I really didn't feel like firmly established until Fall of the House of Usher, honestly. Even after Mandy, it was still, I'm still getting opportunities to interview for things, but I'm still only booking maybe 25% of the things I'm going out for. I'm still, taking meetings and taking generals and getting ghosted and not getting phone calls back or having my reps be like, they went with someone else. I mean, that was still a very, very regular occurrence. It's not like, oh my God, I had my film at Sundance and it got a pretty good distribution deal and it got an agent. Things are green. Like, no, it's just like the next step of like, okay, I wasn't even in the union yet. Like I was still a non-union editor by that point. It wasn't until our next movie, Daniel Isn't Real, that we shot in New York and they were like, okay, we're going to shoot this in the States. It's going to be full IATSE. So do you want to cobble up your initiation fee right now? And I was like, I am so ready. Like I had been waiting to get in the union for years.
I was going to ask how you got into the union. So it was the show that came to you. Is that what happened?
I was on the roster. I had all my days.
I mean, you edited 12 features.
I
I would
edited
hope that you'd
12
have your
features by
days
that
at this
point. I had all my
point.
days lined up. And I was like, yes, I'm so ready. Let's do healthcare. Let's
Yes.
do pension.
Yes.
Totally.
So that means that before that, were you still on your parents' healthcare?
At 25, I had been kicked off. And for 2 years, I was doing Obamacare for 2 years.
Yeah.
I just have process questions for you. You're not climbing this assistant ladder. You are climbing an editor ladder. But when you're on the assistant ladder, you are learning from editors directly above you. They're letting you shadow them or watch them, or you're cutting things that they're then either tweaking or giving you notes or feedback on. When you're on your own, is it just learning by doing the thing, getting notes from producers, or where's the continued education?
That is a great question. And that is something that I feel like I kind of struggled with for several years, which was I had this great network coming out of AFI, getting into indie film, working with the producers and the directors, but we didn't have traditional cutting rooms. I was editing out of my apartment. I wasn't even really only able to have an assistant editor on a lot of these shows up until, number 10, feature number 10, feature 11. I was my own assistant for years. And so there wasn't much of a network process. There certainly wasn't anything that was a mentor related process. And what I was learning a little bit from my producers, because they were the ones that was like the most regular social engagement I had. So not even the mentorship process, but like the traditional editor assistant relationship where like you're both in the same room at the same time until 2021. Wow. Until I did this movie called Toxic Avenger with Legendary. And that finally like got me out of the apartment. It got me like a real cutting room. None of my regulars were available. And so Legendary set me up with this guy named Dylan Thomas, he's a peach. I love Dylan. He had been a first on Fast and Furious and come off of Pirates and Detective Pikachu, and he's very much from the studio world. And so when I started this film in 2021, I was like, Dylan, how does the cutting room actually work? How do I actually talk to vendors? How do we actually do spotting? Like I had done spotting sessions. I had worked with other artists, but like I didn't get the politics so much of working with studios and more established directors and turnovers, and how do you really do sound and visual effects concurrently with an edit. I was coming from the world where you do everything in the Avid temp, and then you lock picture, and then you send off the sound, and you send off the visual effects. Now you have a lock picture. On the studio. My first studio experience. My first studio experience, we are turning over visual effect shots before we're even done with the assembly. We are turning over things to sound before the director has even watched the cut. That was something that was brand new for me. And so my assistant on Toxie, Dylan, I think was like my way to like learning more about the traditional cutting room. And I had a wonderful experience.
I feel like that a lot of people, and like me included, we want to edit. We might edit indie films. We might edit side projects, short films, all that kind of stuff. But unless you're either working with a very, very good director, it's very hard to kind of like learn, quote unquote, like better ways to edit, I guess. I could edit in a way that like you might edit a college film. Yeah. And you could just keep doing that because you just don't know any other way unless you're like with someone or in a room with people who could tell you like, maybe if we cut to this instead of that creates this emotion. And then you're like, oh my God, well, I just learned something new. Now you've learned all this studio stuff. I guess I'm circling back to Zach's question. Did you learn different ways to edit then, just with the directors that you're working with and the producers? And is that sort of also how you were learning different techniques?
I would say I learned a lot more soft skills once I got into studio space, facilitating feedback from producers, test screenings, because you would have a bit more friends and family things. I think I actually learned more in the terms of like the day-to-day, how to edit the scene through the indie stuff, because we had a lot more, I think, production obstacles in the indie stuff. You don't have as much coverage. This is an exaggeration, but like some of the performances in some of these indie films are not as strong as, if you can get some of like the big actors that are on the studio movie. I have been very fortunate to work with some amazing actors. And I've also, I think we've worked with actors that don't really have the gift as much. And you're trying to kind of, how do I sell this moment? How do I make myself believe this? At the end, that's like so much of your responsibility is to, that's your entry point to the narrative, to the story. There's a kind of an unsaid responsibility to protect the actor and, bring yourself in. And so much of my experience on the indie side was to, how do I sell this performance? How do I make myself believe something that's not quite working? And that would extend not just to performances, but sometimes that's photography, sometimes that's the sound doing the work, sometimes that's just trying to make the moment really feel like it's convincing. So much of, I think, what I learned through the process of not just doing and working on material, but reading a lot. And reading even just through a lot of the books I really encourage young editors to read are screenwriting books. Not so much editing books, but like story books, books about narrative, books about drama. Focus on what's really important about a scene. I was telling a friend of mine that I just done a scene that has 8 actors in a room, and we got coverage on every single actor. But really, you only care about 2. So maybe you only need 20% of the coverage, because as an audience member, all my energy in a scene, my emotional involvement is built on the anticipation of what these 2 actors are doing in the scene, and everything else just maybe it fades in the background. Maybe you just hear it. Maybe you play the audio underneath and you just let the camera linger. And so much of that came from, reminding myself the context of the narrative, and looking at screenwriting books and thinking about character arcs, thinking about where do you need to be? Where's the character at this moment? What does it need to achieve in the greater context of the story? And keep on reminding yourself that, like, we have brand new material coming in every day and we have a lot of options, but where should your focus really be?
Any specific books that you recommend for people to read?
Yes.
What is taking his time?
I am turning around. I'm grabbing it from my shelf. I've read this one, Into the Woods, probably about 5 or 6 times.
Remember that we are an audio-only podcast, so showing the picture of the book is not going to help.
I'm showing you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry. John York, Into the Woods. It's a book all about story structure. It's a book that talks about why stories are broken up into 3 parts, why you have a beginning, middle, and an end. And it makes a really interesting argument for the importance of the midpoint specifically. And that's a lesson that I've learned from this book that I've certainly applied into a lot of my work subsequently, which talks about the midpoint of a story. The traditional character arc, you have a character's needs versus the character's wants. And the wants being that more external goal, the character's needs, that unconscious thing they need to change by the end of the story to really achieve growth, to achieve transformation. The midpoint, this book argues, is really overlooked. It's that point of, like, a character for the first time discovering that what is the unconscious truth I need to learn to complete this journey. But it's forced me to look at, my stories on a greater overall look and think about, where is the midpoint of the story and how can I really make sure I'm bringing out the material of the subtext of these changes throughout.
Wow, I'm going to have to look it up. I'm going to have to read it now.
I was going to ask too, unless you had other book recommendations, I don't want to cut you off from recommending more things.
No, the answer is no. Brett does not know any.
I'm excited to dive in.
He tells us to read all these screenwriting books, and yet he only has one book to recommend. I'm
like,
kidding. I'm sure
that I actually know about. I don't have any stories on these other books.
I'm sure that all of any kind of screenwriting book is very helpful.
The ones that specifically talk about character. At the end, I have another one in the other room that it's not in front of my Avid right now that I can't remember the name of, but it touches on character arcs, thinking about trajectories, growth, and at the end of the day, it's all intention and obstacle.
In indie space, maybe you have a couple of experiences where you worked with more green directors. Did you ever feel like you were doing the educating for the director when they came into the edit room with you?
Certainly I can feel with some first-time directors that there's a little bit more uncertainty around the process. One of the things I found really beneficial for first-time directors is to make sure that we do things in a linear pass. Like, let's see the film in rough stages, and we'll watch that down and then make small incremental steps to improve upon that. Record your emotional observations, take a lot of notes, put it in front of audience members. The film will gradually, incrementally get better. But this idea that you have to make it perfect, the first time you look at the scene, it just forces you, I think, into kind of a loop that can be a bit difficult. My role is to be a helper. My role is to be a facilitator. I am not here to be a tool of the director, but I'm here to collaborate. I remember I was at AFI, and we had an editors panel that showed up. I remember asking the question, this was a joke question I was kind of doing to get a rise, but I was like, what do you do when your director is just wrong? And it got a laugh out of the audience, which was my goal. And a woman by the name of Sally Menke raised her hand. Sally Menke, for those who don't know, was Quentin Tarantino's longtime film editor. She raised her hand and she said, well, your director cannot be wrong. You are there to support your director. You're there to help your director. You can have constructive criticism with your director, but it's all done in spirit of helping them. All done in service of helping the movie. And if you are taking this antagonistic point of view, you versus them, you're not cut out to be a film editor.
Wow.
And so I was like 22 years old, 23 years old, and that was a cement bag hitting me in the head. That comment sat with me for a very long time and very much changed my approach to how I engage with all of my colleagues. If I have a first-time filmmaker in here, it doesn't matter if it's their first film or if it's their 15th film. My job in here is to help them. Sometimes I find first-time filmmakers ask me a lot more questions than more experienced directors. I think it's probably the biggest change. I've had the joy of working with Mr. Mike Flanagan on a few films, or a few shows right now. And once Mike likes it, he's like, good, we're done. We can move on. A first-time director might want to kind of pick at the seams a little bit more and kind of be like, well, what's more in here? Can we open it up? And I've certainly had those experiences too, where a director will want to change the movie every other day. And that is part of their process. And when you work with, I think, first-time filmmakers, there's a bit more of, how does this work? Maybe it can be something completely different. Maybe it's something else. Typically, this is not a blanket statement, but typically there's a little bit more uncertainty and ambiguity about, I'm not quite so sure about this. And in that case, my job is to offer potential options, swap some things around. So I've found with first-time filmmakers, some of the best things you can do is put in front of a test screen, friends, family audience, and get your data, get your feedback that way. And that, if they can see incremental movement on the movie or the show getting better, I think that really puts them at ease.
I want to get a little into the technical weeds. So I want to understand your specific process in a day-to-day, right?
Yeah.
So you receive dailies, you get the footage. How do you organize it to start a cut? What do you do? What are you thinking about? What's your process?
Well, I think the first thing I do is I reread the script. I reread the line script that's coming in that day just to kind of refresh my memory about what they shot. And not just like the spoken word, but I try to remind myself, like, what's the context of the scene? Whose point of view are we in? Where is the real drama occurring? Is the real impetus of the scene, is it unsaid? Is it in the subtext? Is it something that you're meant to be suggestive? Or is it more oblique? Is it spoken?
Now, what do you do when the scene is them walking from the car to the restaurant?
That's a bit more simple then. I mean, honestly, some of the the easiest
Whose
scenes.
point of view is that? Where's the problem in that?
There is
shot?
such thing as objective point of view, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
When it is just like it's a walk and talk, and you have a steady cam, you're like, oh, boom, there you go. It's objective, and that's the action scenes are typically a lot easier than some of the dialogue scenes, and that's why I love dialogue scenes. I love a dinner table scene, but they're infinitely much more difficult to assemble because they're often wondering like, where do I really put the camera? Is it on the reaction? Is it on the person speaking? Do I care about the person thinking about something they're going to say, and the point of the scene being the anticipation and the build of an inner discovery? Those are the kind of questions I'm asking myself. I'm looking at a script even before I'm viewing dailies. I'm trying to think, what are the landmark moments of this? Where do I think as an audience member I want to be? And then I will start watching material. I watch things. I have my team build me a string out of everything, and I will begin to watch down, and I do a select reel by culling material as I see it. I follow a method that I think I learned from Joe Walker. If I see something I like, I cut it, I move it up to V2. If I see something I really like, I move it up to V3. And I've done something pretty similar the last few years where I will have, on Carrie right now, for instance, we have scenes that are like 8 hours of dailies. And so I will begin to kind of build a string out and begin to move things up to a layer. And so by the end of watching down all this material, which sometimes I do have to watch down all 8 hours, I will then have a string out that is, hopefully an hour, culled down from that. And then I go back, I think about story, I think about how do I get into the scene? What's the story beats I really need to be hitting? How does that align with my impression of the material? The stuff that I really liked in the dailies and the stuff I emotionally responded to, does that sync up with where I think the story needs to be? And analyzing, is there discrepancies in that? If there's not, then you feel like you're in a pretty good place. I can start to kind of build out. And sometimes I will take an anchor take. I will take like a hero take I really liked of the climactic moment of the scene, or a specific read somewhere that I think that my dramatic impulses are getting to get into. Maybe I'll start there and build out before that, and I'll build after that. Or I might start at the very top. I might start at the very, very beginning of the scene and just work my way linear through it, thinking about where do I want the camera to be, utilized in some of these selects.
Now, I've tried to do that myself, and I've realized within a scene, it's like, okay, I like this moment, and I brought it up. And then I realized that I'm missing a shit ton of the stuff that connects it all. So what do you do in those? Do you just go back through all of those takes of whatever sections that you're missing, and then kind of like choose which one you think is like works for the selects that you've picked?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
I'm honestly really happy when I don't have everything in the string out in like my selects reel. It makes it so I'm really focused on the stuff I really responded to. I'm not going to have a selects for every single line in the script. I think that would just get a bit cumbersome and would make the select zero like really large. But in that case, if I'm building up to take three, I'm using take three for like the hero moment, for instance, I will retroactively go back and think like, is there a reason I can't use a take two? Is there if there's something with the actor's performance that is really different, is there a much different read? Is there anything from a logistical point of view that I can't use it? Is there like a hair continuity issue? Is there something in the lighting that they adjusted that prevented me from using that? So I often check that before I begin to kind of pull stuff from my dailies bin. It's very much a process of trying to balance your gut impulse on the material, viewing things objectively, while also looking at the source material, looking at script notes, director's commentary, your own impression about the script from an analysis point of view, and trying to find a balance between what did you react to while viewing the dailies, and also what does the story need to do. And then this is it's certainly a fluid process. I have,
Right, of course.
once I get that assembly done, I will often just put it to bed, come back at it 2 days later, rewatch it. Is there a flow? Is there a rhythm? Does it still grab me from an emotional perspective? Sometimes I need those 2 days just to kind of clear my head of like the short-term memory of like the obstacles I had while building the scene. So getting some distance on it has been my last few shows of trying to put it into a currents cut bin, not to overanalyze it, do some sound work, make sure levels are good, do an ambience pass, make sure the hard effects are done, but then I'll put it aside and not come back to it. And because when we're in production, we're dealing with a lot of stuff coming in. So sometimes I just don't have the bandwidth to keep on workshopping a scene again and again and again. I find it really beneficial to finish something, put it aside, and move on. After the few weeks you've been building this thing, look at something once you hopefully have some objectivity about the scene that you cut like 3 weeks ago, and you can hopefully have a bit more of an unbiased opinion on it.
And hopefully you have the scene maybe before and after, and you can kind of like see how it looks in that context.
Yes, I should mention every single time I'm cutting a scene where I have the previous scene or the following scene, I am looking at the transitions. I'm always thinking about transitions, whether it be a pre-lap, a match cut, or frame, a sonic edit, a sonic match, a musical thing that goes into the assembly process. I'm almost never editing scenes on a standalone scene-by-scene basis. I'm thinking how it flows from scene A to B to C.
Oh, okay.
It's cool to know that you're thinking about that during the assembly process and that doesn't come necessarily later. I have a question too, specifically with horror. How much of is it a science or a technical thing that things have to be cut a certain way, or is there malleability to construct scares for you?
At the end, this is all an emotional experience. There are sometimes some rules we look at when we're building something to be like, okay, always try it, never pre-lap a sting, even more in the frame. But other directors, I don't necessarily have those same rules. I did a film a few years ago called The Vigil, and that was really just kind of technical know-how in terms of like building scares. Just really kind of do it through your gut. And so I'm bringing in beds, I'm bringing in risers, I'm bringing in stings. So much of, I think, what made that film effective was the atmosphere, crafting something that felt very ethereal and spooky and dreadful. And that's, in your ambience, that's in your score, building anticipation through the cinematography by holding long shots, by utilizing a lot of light work from our camera team. From an editorial perspective, in terms of like building scares, I always try and remind myself that ambiguity is your greatest ally. Creating a unspoken threat and you don't know where it is.
Jaws.
Yep. You don't know when it's going to occur. You don't know necessarily even what it is, but working on playing with audience expectations. And so much of that is about, I mentioned this previously, about I love utilizing wide shots. While building scares, you're working on genre-specific stuff because it allows the audience, their eye to travel to a point. I think establishing a scare, establishing the set piece, allowing your eye to explore. Sometimes the absence of music is a huge contributor in this too, because when there's no sound, sometimes that's the scariest thing because you're not safe. You know that something could happen at any point. And same with building up to a reveal or building up to a scare or building up to a sting. Sometimes tighter framing, something with more claustrophobia, is going to be more effective because you don't know necessarily what is happening outside the peripheral. I think if you talk to most editors, they'll talk about spacing, they'll talk about ambience, they'll talk about anticipation, but they'll also talk about empathy. It's important that you are really feeling what your character is feeling, and that sense of the unknown of what is going to occur is important as well. it is difficult to really kind of assign any traditional rules while working on a scare scene because, I mean, there are other examples that directly contradict what I'm saying right now. Like, it's all about the moment. It's all about the character. This is my long way of saying, Zach, there are no specific rules. It comes down to what the moment requires and what makes the goosebumps form on your arms.
You spoke about having an agent at UTA. I want to know what your experience is with your agent. Did you find, I know you said UTA, did they come to you? Did you like talk with multiple agents? How did you kind of pick your agent? And what's kind of their role in your career now?
Yeah. So they came out to me. They reached out to me through Spectravision, actually. My first agent reached out to a staff member at the production company, I think just generally as an inquiry. And she was like, I don't think Brett has an agent. Would you be interested in talking to him? And I went down to the office and I met, and it was kind of a handshake deal. I was surprised by how casual the entire thing was.
Wow. So wait, so you didn't even like you just went and met them? There was no like interview for you at least to be like, do I like this person?
Well, that was kind of it. That was like,
that was the meat.
Do you want to come down to the Beverly Hills office and have a coffee and chat? And Matt, my first agent, was a big fan of Mandy. Had followed some of Spectravision's movies, and I liked his sensibility. I liked his taste. And, right away, he was sending me material stuff. So I was still working mostly in like my core group of collaborators from the Spectravision guys, but I found myself given opportunities to meet on a few things that I thought were like way outside my radar. Not big budget things by any stretch of the imagination. We're still talking like, sub $10 million films, but things with like casts that I'm very like, oh God, I know this person. I know that actor. I know that director. And he got a lot of good things in front of me. By no means does having an agent book you material, but they're, I think, going to be able to get you into a Zoom room or get you into a general or get you to meet a few folks. They are that middleman. They're on that conduit. I've certainly found more opportunities after signing with a rep than I've had going on my own, and I'm very grateful to them for that.
Have they been mainly finding all of your projects, or are you also still going out or hearing from directors yourself and getting stuff that way too?
I would say it's about 2/3 my contacts since then. Some of these opportunities are coming through people I've met in the past through my team. I do find that they're still finding me material, and they're certainly the conduit to get me into the room with some of these more established producers or bigger studios. Toxic Avenger was a great example. Not a lot of pedigree coming into that. I'd never done a big budget movie, and Legendary has done some of the biggest movies out there. And UTA was the ones that were facilitated that meeting and got me in the door. I do think finding an agent has been an advantage. It certainly has facilitated a lot of meetings and generals, that opportunities I don't think I would have found my way without. But I think I'm still finding about half my own work, 2/3 my own work.
I have about 2 more questions left for you before we can go into our final segment. You are a member of ACE.
I am.
See. It's funny because I think that we've talked to some people who are members of ACE, but I don't think we've actually asked them about the process of how to become a member and, what it kind of means. So I wanted to know if you could give us some insight into that.
Sure. I'll say with the preface that I'm a new member. I have only been a member for about a year.
Congrats.
So I am still a baby. Thank you. I applied. I got together all of my resume. I got together all of my stuff, all of my credits. I did an analysis of all of my days. I'm like, do I have enough work days? I think by the time I applied, I had like 23 features. I was like, I think I have enough.
Do you remember how many work days you needed?
I think it was something like 600. Someone's listening to this and they're like, that's wrong. I applied like 2 years ago. I applied and it took them like 6 months to get back to me. And they were like, we've received your admission. We're going to review it with our admissions committee. Okay. And then I later on had a Zoom meeting with a lot of folks. But I will say there was a process of like, you had to be fair amount of experience, a lot more experience than I had for my union application for features. You definitely needed something that I think amounted to like several years of experience. And then I had to get 2 cover letters, which was the more difficult thing because I'm still kind of a baby in the film world sphere. I came up in the indie world. I didn't have a lot of colleagues that were other editors. So finding those 2 cover letters, submitting that, and then after you get all that stuff in, they invite you to do an interview where I meet with their membership committee, just talking about kind of this, like, here's my story. Here's my mentors. Here are things I've done. And then I was really, really fortunate and really happy that I got a phone call from Sabrina, several weeks later, and they were like, congratulations.
I have a question just because when I was able to be a voice on this podcast, our topic of discussion largely centered around having a family in post-production. You are also a father and have a family, a very prolific career. And I was just wondering how you make it work, the work-life balance where you find time for both things.
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, I have a partner that is amazing. She, I think, understands the requirements of the job, and yet it's very much a two-sided thing. Like I am not at the office until 8 p.m. every night. Like I've set my own rules that I'm like, at 6 p.m. I am driving home. Might be the occasional day where I might need to stay longer if an emergency has happened or if I need to get something out. But I also have the advantage of technology in this regard. So a typical day, 9 to 6 are my hours. I'm in office. And then at 6 p.m., I'm in the car, I'm driving home so I can put my boys to bed. I have twin boys, just about 2 years old, and I make it a point every single day. I'm getting the guys down. I'm going to get FaceTime with them. I see them in the morning a little bit. So much of what's made this possible has been able to, allocate a certain amount of the income towards a nanny during the day, which has been really important for us. I mean, my wife and I both commute to work.
I was going to ask what your wife does.
She works in fashion. She works in the
okay.
offices downtown. She works is pretty close to, she's only like 20, 25 minutes away in terms of commute. But for us, we found a daytime nanny. Makes it good for us so we can both go to our respective jobs. I'm up at a facility that's only like 20 minutes away. So I have the advantage of being able to kind of have a word in like, where am I working? Where are we going to set up the show? So the last few years, I've been able to work out of a facility that's only like 20 minutes away from my house. So at 6 p.m., I'm driving home. I'm putting the boys down. I don't know if this scenario would have worked like 5 years ago, what I'm describing right now, because after I get home from work, if there are scenes that remain to be worked on, I'm heading out into my back office here, and I'm hopping on Jump Desktop after my boys go down, and I'm finishing my work. And that has allowed sanity. That allows for a happy spouse. That's allowed for me to see my kids. And so far, it's been going okay. I encourage my assistants to, do work from home if at all necessary. There's very much a culture in the office of, having each other's backs, looking out for one another, being flexible. And so we're managing work from home. We're managing remote. And we're in the office, I think, 80% of the time, 75% of the time. But I am making it big as being a parent and having, Dylan being a parent and Ruben being a parent. I'm very much making it sure that, yes, the work is important. Life is more important. Being a father is more important. Being a parent is more important. That's life. We are fortunate and very lucky to be able to be doing what we are doing, but this is also not the 90s anymore. We have new technology that allows us to facilitate having a work-life balance that we couldn't do years ago. And, so far it works. I mean, we're weeks ahead of schedule on my TV show.
Wow.
And we're averaging 9 to 6 every day.
All right, last question I have for you. What is your dream job? If you could edit anything.
Edit anything. I love the works of that Denny and Joe Walker are doing. I mean, I love their entire roster of things they've made the last few years, whether it be Arrival, Dune, Blade Runner. Like, then that stuff is amazing. Like, it's high concept, escapism, working with some of the best actors in the world, but all still character driven, all still very intimate and small, and yet somehow quite large. I love how they're able to balance, those seemingly two disparate things on a grand canvas. At the end of the day, they know it's all about character. It's all about small, intimate moments and be able to empathize with someone. And no one cares about a grand battle with thousands or millions of soldiers unless you care about one guy in the field.
Right. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, Zach, before we go into our Splice and Spew?
No, let's do our Splice and Spew since you have about 10 minutes left.
Splice and Spew.
I guess we'll go first so you have a little bit of time to think, unless you're ready and you'd like to go.
I'm going to end on an optimistic note.
Okay, so this is a splice. What's got a splice?
I'm going to splice, I think, about camaraderie, about fellowship. And for a lot of your, I'm sure it's going to pertain to a lot of your audience members who are looking for opportunities and looking for career growth and trying to establish themselves here in the film business. So many of my recent collaborators, whether they be post-PAs, assistants, were hired because they reached out to me. Were hired because they had guts and they did a cold email or they found my email, or they followed me on Instagram and they sent me a DM and they're like, I like what you're doing. I would just like to get to know you. I'm not inviting a lot more of messages to come through my inbox. If it happens, it happens. But what I'm saying is that, like, if you are looking to get established in the film business, your best road, and I think your best opportunity, is to meet people that are working, whose work you admire. Send them emails, send them, reach out. So much of my perceived stability in the business is because I have a network of people. I have people that I can refer, that I can rely on, that I call, that I can even just talk to as like little micro therapists. We need each other right now more than ever. The ability just to find camaraderie, to find someone that is going through the kind of same stuff that you are, whether it be challenges with the employment market, whether it be, a bad time at work, the fears or anxiety about the future, reach out to one another, talk to one another, meet each other. I think you will be surprised by how often people say yes to a coffee.
All right.
I love that.
So network people. Always network.
Yes.
Always
go to parties.
Always pressing network over here.
Pressing network. Reach out. Go to parties. Have coffee. Go to the functions.
In
go
earnest.
to the
Like, reach out in earnest.
I met a buddy for coffee that I worked with on a recent show. And he was like, he apologized at one point in the meeting where he's like, I don't want you to think I'm just having coffee because I want to keep our relationship intact. I like you as a friend. And I'm like, dude, it can be both.
It could be both.
Like,
it can be both.
That's the joy about this.
Yeah.
It's like, this can still be a business expense. I can still write this coffee off, and we can we can still, touch base about movies, about, you can share me your concerns, fears, anxieties. We can talk about the good stuff. We can talk about movies, talk about things you are liking, just how your life is going. Like, they're all intertangled. I think everybody in the entertainment business realizes that, like, we need each other to coexist and to thrive.
All right, Zach, you got one? Or you want me to go?
I got one. I'm going to splice about my running stroller.
You're going to splice about it?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's a good one. Yeah.
You can't be mixing these up.
I know.
You're the purveyor of this.
I'm one of the hosts, and I'm mixing this up already. Go ahead.
I was talking to some friends who've been on the pod before, including Zachary Harrison. I used to love going on runs, but it's been waning a lot recently because I have 2 children. One of them is 4, and then the other one who is 13 months. It's just been tough, holding space for that, and then also for my career, which luckily is mostly out of my apartment these days as well. It's difficult to also just make the time when you're so exhausted. And so recently my wife and I have found a rhythm where she's able to work in the mornings and I will take my daughter out for a walk. And I was just like, you know what? It would be great if I could just turn this into a running, like an active moment, not just like a leisurely, fun walk. And so I invested in a running stroller, and I've been running 3 days a week for the past 3 weeks. And it's really, really great. So in the spirit of sort of continuing advice from when I was able to be on the podcast and more work-life balance kind of things. If you get a chance and you're a parent and you are sort of searching for time, being able to do a workout while you have baby in tow is really, really great. I asked my doctor if she had a running stroller recommendation, and she said, yeah. And then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, that's an $800 running stroller. I'm not going to buy that.
Of course.
And, but I found one used secondhand twice, third hand, and it was $100. I'm like, this is going to get the job done. And so even just that small of an investment in my own health has helped me immensely, I feel like, over the past 3 weeks. That's my splice for today.
Basically, if you can do anything while also doing something else, helps with your work-life balance.
1,000%.
I am also going to splice. So we got a huge optimistic
really
podcast here, a really positive one. I guess it's sort of a splice and maybe a little bit of a spew, but I am going to splice about my love of popcorn. I really, really love popcorn so much to the point that if you are wanting to have any, I suggest that you get your own, because you cannot have any of mine. I'm not a huge fan of I like cheddar, all the flavored ones, but butter and salt is just the very perfect combination. I used to, when I was younger, I did not buy popcorn or anything at the movies because of money. And now I'm like, I can't go to the movies without buying popcorn, because that's the best kind of popcorn. And I always find it really interesting when people who are in movies hate popcorn. I'm like, how, what, why? I thought about getting my own little popcorn stand. I forget how, I don't even know what they're called. The typical ones that you see at the like a sports event, or that are like the carts, and then they go into the pot, and then, you get like the popcorn salt and everything. It's a little too much money for me though. I've had various popcorn makers in the past as far as like an air pop machine. I usually do it over the stove because I eat so much that I don't think I could be healthy and have the microwave popcorn every single day. So I buy the kernels and then I pop them on the stove and then I add butter and salt, and that's kind of like my night snack. And everybody who knows me is always just like, after dinner, it's like popcorn time. I'm like, yep, I'm going to have some popcorn right now. That, and I'm going to add in potatoes. Popcorn and potatoes are the way to my heart. So my boyfriend every year just gets me popcorn. That's all I need. I just need popcorn and potato chips, and I'm a happy person.
The Leanne food pyramid is just popcorn, potatoes.
Yes. The pyramid is consistent.
The nutritional pyramid.
Yes, it's consistent of not just potatoes, but it's got to be all the different kinds of potatoes that then fall under potato chips, French fries, mashed potatoes, and then popcorn, maybe like a home style popcorn, maybe like I might throw in kettle corn. Kettle corn's one of those things I don't choose on my own, but if I have one, I probably can't stop eating it. So, that's my splice is just about popcorn and potatoes. That's what I got today.
It's a great splice. And I'm glad we had a fully splice panel of people.
Full splice episode.
Full splice episode.
Ending on a high note.
Brett, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. And I feel
thank you so much for being on.
I found myself taking notes, like, oh yeah, you got to try this. I got to do this. I'm going to buy the book, Into the Woods. And I appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you for an invitation.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Oh my God, I forget my outro. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sips and Clips. You can catch us there. You can catch us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod, or you can email us at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You keep on sipping while we keep on clipping. Bye.
Bye.
This is the last episode of Sips and Clips for 2025. Tune in January 6, 2026 to our next episode with the amazing Amelia Allwarden. This will definitely be one you don't want to miss. Happy holidays, everyone! Sips and Clips is a podcast produced by Leanne McFalls and Michael Schusterman. Logo design by Mike Knoll. Production sound by Cassidy Leggin. Post-production sound by Zach Griffin. Follow us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod, or email us at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.